Welcome back. 28 minutes before the top of the hour. Bill Martinez here. Great to have you with us. We got Bill Salus up next. Bill is a renowned prophecy expert, best-selling author of The Nuclear Showdown in Iran, Millennium Prophecies, and The New Jerusalem. Interesting. Before the latest news that came out in terms of China brokering a deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia, which is quite interesting. Bill and I were talking about, okay, let's do a Middle East update and talk about what's going on here. And Bill has addressed this issue, as I say, in his book, The Nuclear Showdown in Iran. And we're starting to see a rather interesting and I believe provocative movement. We have been keeping our eyes on China. China's desire is to replace the United States. The United States, for whatever reason, backed off from the Middle East. Well, a void's not going to exist. And that void is going to be filled. And China's happy to fill that void because they saw this as a grand opportunity. And here they are announcing a broker deal. And China was in the middle of this to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia and Iran. Bill Salus joins us now. Hey, Bill, how you doing?
Great, Bill. It's good to be back on the program.
I was just explaining to the people here, you and I were talking before the announcement of what was going on, that China had brokered this deal with Iran and Saudi Arabia. This is quite telling, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge development in the Middle East, and it basically puts Saudi Arabia more in line with their prophetic future. Saudi Arabia is involved in a few prophecies in the end times, and butting up with Israel is not in those prophetic cards. What's going to happen here? And of course, it's too soon to know exactly the outcome. They're going to give it a couple of months until they reestablish their mutual embassies, one in Tehran and of course one in Saudi Arabia from Iran's point of perspective. But I think what's going to happen is going to solidify, one, their pro-Palestinian approaches, and two, their common disdain, especially on the Iran side, toward Israel. And Israel's never really been a friend of Saudi Arabia, but recently, and Netanyahu was touting this, he was thinking there'd basically be a possibility to normalize relationships with Saudi Arabia because of the common threat of Iran. The Jerusalem Post had reported just a month back that Netanyahu headline, "Peace with Saudi Arabia linked with goal of stopping Iran." And the subcaption says, Netanyahu touted the idea that Israel would normalize ties with Saudi Arabia, saying such a move would launch a historic change in Israel's position in the Middle East. Well, I don't think that's going to be the case right now. Of course, Israel's they're spinning it right now. They're basically saying this could still work out. Turkey's made friends with Iran, and they're making friends with Israel, and so on and so forth. Saudi Arabia is trying to make friends with Syria again, which since the revolution, Saudi Arabia wasn't friends with them. But I think there's a big difference here. Iran wants to wipe Israel off the map. Turkey doesn't want to wipe Israel off the map. And from my perspective, I basically think that Saudi Arabia is going to be trying to avoid getting nuked by Iran or having another attack on their Aramco oil facility, which shut down half of their oil production about a year or two back. And it calmed down the Houthi situation down in Yemen, that Iran's supporting the Houthis. I see Saudi Arabia leaning more toward trying to kowtow toward Iran than vice versa.
Well, and I can appreciate that, because how far along is Iran now, in terms of their nuclear ambitions?
Well, recently they announced that they've enriched up to 84%. The JCPOA allowed them to enrich up to 3.5%. I think it was something like that. Now they're up to 84%, Bill, and 90% is when you can get a nuclear threshold for a weapon, and that's just basically a stone's throw. They're right on the cusp. Within an article came out a week ago that they were just a couple weeks away from having the fissile materials for a nuclear weapon. And I think at this point, Saudi Arabia, the Business Insider article had a headline on the very day that this agreement with Iran and Saudi Arabia said, the telling headline says, Saudi Arabia making peace with Iran in a deal brokered by China is a middle finger to Biden. And your listeners probably remember when Biden went over there in July of 2022, he basically did a fist pump with Mohammed bin Salman, which sort of shocked and surprised the Americans, like, what's that all about? And that's not your traditional diplomatic greeting. But what's worse at this point, a pump to the fist or the symbolism of a middle finger to the face is what I'm concerned about here, because in befriending Iran, they defriended essentially Israel and America.
Well, yeah, clearly. And the thing is that, Biden's been a problem from day one. How do you, shout such disdain, for oil, and then you go over to one of the largest producers of oil and their high interest in the country, and you try to make friends with them when you've been speaking so poorly of oil? I mean, how are they going to accept him?
Well, they didn't do anything he asked. They didn't turn up the spigots for oil to America on the level he was open at any level. And the other thing that's really we need to watch here, Bill, Business Insider also had an article out in January 8th of this year. It says China looks to weaken U.S. dollar with the petro yen. Oil producers rally to Beijing, and Russia has become an Asian nation, analyst says. So with the Federal Reserve on the economic warpath of raising rates, the last thing our staggering U.S. economy needs, Bill, is to lose the petrodollar. It's one of our most cherished financial assets. So, China is really a force to be reckoned in the Middle East. They're actually the number one exporter of oil, importer of oil from Iran. They're right on the top of the list of getting oil from Saudi Arabia. And they're trying to become the player in the Middle East right now.
Right. We've been hearing for the last couple of years the petrodollar was at risk. And in fact, it was predicted by January of this year that would all but be gone. Why is it still hanging in there right now? I mean, with China making the moves that they're making, I see them getting closer to be able to take over, that prestigious and very powerful position of controlling the petrodollar.
Well, that is a really good question, Bill. In light of several things developing right now, of course, the petrodollar is cemented. It's been cemented for quite some time, so it's not that easy just to abandon it because it's got its global reach per se. But you also have these development of these cryptocurrencies and digital currencies now with the nations, America included. China's already been piloting it. So basically, there may be sort of a wait and see situation as to when you really make that move. When are these cryptocurrencies going to come in on national levels and that sort of thing? I don't know, Bill. I wish I had that answer. I hope we don't lose the petrodollar to the petro yen, but they certainly are pushing for that.
Well, and how does all this, Bill? How is it all relating, to biblical prophecy?
Well, it's interesting. Like I said at the beginning, this puts Saudi Arabia more in the line with prophecies involving them. Also, Iran is involved in prophecies as well. And I think Syria is involved, and Syria is a proxy of Iran. So basically what's going to happen more in the Middle East is the Islamic world is going to continue to unite further against Israel. And that's what these prophecies talk about, wars coming against Israel. The UAE and Bahrain, who are also involved in the Abraham Accords, what are they going to do, right? They're already supporting this peace agreement here with Saudi Arabia and Iran. And we should not be surprised that Saudi Arabia did this because they've been meeting since 2021 in indirect talks in Baghdad, Iraq. And so has the UAE. They've been going to Tehran, the UAE.
Right.
So I basically think we got to be watching major changes in the Middle East. And we can talk about on the next segment a little bit about the prophecies if you want to.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. We'll break that down. He is the renowned prophecy expert, best-selling author of The Nuclear Showdown in Iran, Millennium Prophecies, and the New Jerusalem. Bill Salus is back with us, and as he said, we will delve into the prophetic relevance of these current times. This is, this is what gives us hope, ladies and gentlemen, to know and to be clearly reminded that in spite of rumors of wars and all the contention that's going on, God Almighty is still in charge, and there is a plan to be fulfilled. Stay